Entertain a motion for approval of agenda items.
Gomez, so moved.
Motion by Mr. Gomez, second.
Frank Cordova, second.
Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Mr. Sepulveda, point of order.
Aye.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sepulveda.
Yes, sir.
Okay, point of order. I'd like to recommend to the board that in terms of the agenda, to please consider moving item 3 above number 2 in case somebody out in the public has any questions or anything concerning item number 2, which is discussion on remote learning extension and possible board action. So I'm recommending that in this motion, we move public input to be the first item before we go on to unfinished business.
Okay, any objections? Okay. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Sorry, I was muted, but I had a question. Where is it exactly that this is going to be on the agenda?
Mr. Guardiano, if you
Yes.
look,
Item 2 and item 3 are going.
So this is only public input on issues that are on the agenda, correct?
Right.
And so the bottom ones will still be there for things that are not on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Please let the minutes show that Mr. Guadiana is on. All right, that moves us to approval of the minutes for August 10th. Entertain a motion.
So move. Ms. Gilbert?
Motion by Mr. Guadiana, second.
Second. Frank Cordova.
Second by Mr. Cordova. Any objections or any corrections? Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. Moves us to item F, Mr. Mendoza.
yes, so Mr. President, members of the board, it is an honor for me as the superintendent to introduce to the board tonight and to the public our student rep for our upcoming school year. And Tonya Ortiz will be on there if she can come on. Toya Ortiz is a 12th grader, and she is a member of our cheerleading squad. And she's been a joy of having her on my committee here the last 3 years, and look forward to this year. And unfortunately, here we go. All the meetings will be virtual. I can't bring them to the school to discuss. So, Tonya, are you on there so that the board members can see you? Can you click yourself on?
Hello.
Mr. Guardiana, can you wave at her so you know who you are?
Sorry.
Tonya,
Welcome, Toya.
Thank you.
From
Mr.
Frank
Cordova,
Cordova.
can you wave at her?
Hello. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then we have Mr. Gomez. Are you somewhere there, Mr. Gomez?
Yes, sir. Hi, Toya. Welcome.
Great. And then we have Mr. Sepulveda, please.
Yeah, Toya, welcome to the board, and I'm sure as the years go by, we're gonna probably assign you some kind of a task to get some information for us. You're our go-between the board and the high school, or really all the students. If there's something that needs to be come up from the students, you'll be assigned that task to bring the information to us. And welcome aboard. And if there's anything else that you need to bring up, let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Again, welcome aboard. We wish you the best of luck all year, okay? So, good.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
No, sir.
Okay,
Don't mute it. I'm going to mute it.
this brings us up to public input. At this time, we'll entertain anything from the public in reference to our agenda. Anything from the public in reference to our agenda?
I don't see any.
Nothing? Okay. Brings us to update on unfinished business. Discussion on remote learning extension. Mr. Mendoza.
Yes, as stated at the last board meeting, Mr. Sepulveda and members of the board, I was asked for permission to bring this so we can open it up for discussion on the possible extension of continuing remote learning past Labor Day. And there's two options that I'd like to discuss. One is that we go for the first term to go remote learning for the first 9 weeks, which ends October 8th. And the new 9 weeks starts October 10th. So we have two options there. One, to just go till the end of our first 9 weeks, and then we can have a board meeting there in October. No, I'm sorry, the last board meeting in September to discuss where we're at and see how it's going. And this one, Tonya and the students will let us know how it's going. And then possibly we can renew the extension for another 9 weeks to take us through the end of the first semester, which is December 17th. So with that, I yield to any board member that wants to open it up for discussion and some questions. That's my start right there, Mr. Sepulveda.
Why are we just going 9 weeks at a time instead of, if we're looking at maybe extending to January and not do that now?
There's my recommendation is that, we want to be proactive and see if for some reason, the COVID has settled down and we can go ahead and start coming in at a hybrid mode at the beginning of the second 9 weeks. But no, we can, on the table, we can either go the 9 weeks or the full semester. That's why I'm asking the board what is their preference. And I'd like to open this up for discussion. That's also on the table, Mr. Sepulveda.
Okay. Anybody else?
Along those lines, I agree with Toy. I think the initial plan of starting after Labor Day caused a lot of anxieties because the teachers had to kind of prepare for something in addition to doing what they're regularly doing. And I think if we make the decision to go to January, they can focus 100% on the online learning. However, I have a lot of questions on the participation because of the lack of computers. I read an article today in the paper about our predicament, and there's some things there that I found out in our budget committee meeting that were revelations to me. When we come to the board meetings, we generally get this perception that things are being aggressively looked at and things are going well. And when I talk to parents and when they call me, it's not that way. And while here we had, it had been represented to us in the board meetings that these computers were ordered back in April, March or April. And that turned out to be the 240 computers. It was not the 1,000. Mr. Mendoza did provide me some clarification on when the 1,000 were ordered. And it said that they had approval to solicit a particular source of funding in mid-April. And finally, it wasn't until the end of May 30th to be exact, that that funding was secured. And then the order took place. And the funding had to do with repurposing or redefining some scope of grants. And when I asked them about that, they said, well, that's problematic. That requires approval. We have to submit different things. And they didn't see it abnormal for it to take that long. Now, the problem is that the administration chose this particular avenue for getting the funding when we had money available in the bond to get get the computers and maybe reimburse that in some way. But that delay certainly contributed. Granted, there's a shortage, and I read the article on the shortage as well. But there's people like Silver ordered theirs back in, I believe they said in March, and they got theirs. And if we had, and I firmly believe that if we had ordered ours much earlier, we could be having the computers. At least we'd be closer to having them now. So that's disappointing because, well, the other part of the question is how many students do not have devices and or access? Do we know for sure?
I will call on Estes. Can you come up with, do you have it? Do you have how much? The parents haven't responded 100% yet? Yeah.
So, Mr. Guadiana, Mr. President, members of the board. So when we asked for a list from the principals in the spring of parents and students that didn't have devices, we had 213, I believe it was. I don't remember the exact number because I don't have my paper in front of me. Families who didn't have a device. And so at that time, when we ordered the 200 devices, and then we had a few other devices that we used, we handed all of those out to everybody who was in the list. And that left us with 16 additional devices that were not handed out in the spring because we had fulfilled all the families who were on the list. So right now, we do not have a list of families of students who do not have devices. We don't have that. Maybe the principals have that. The list that we do have right now is a list of families who are asking for some support with internet because they don't have internet or because they have dead zones. And on that list right now, we have 46. I just added another 4 that principals sent me. So we have 50 students that do not have internet or they live in dead zones. As far as, again, how many do not have a device in the home, I can't give you that number at this time.
I would consider that to be valuable information for making decisions about prolonging the online part. And I would also consider that to be valuable information for developing strategies on coming up with alternative purchase opportunities. Because the big 4 do not have some, certainly there's other venues to purchase computers. And I don't get the feeling that we're working that hard. When you consider we have, I don't know how many, and the other part is that the missing number of the total people that don't have devices is also concerning. I think that should be something we should have a really good grasp of. Again, it would give us better planning ability to address that concern. When you consider we've already been in school almost 4 or 5 weeks, and some students are taking paper products at home, but their access to any kind of teacher input is very limited at best. And when you have students using devices that are inadequate for what it is, it seems like educating the students is not our highest priority by far. And I can't state that any clearer. If it was, we'd know how many we were trying that are out of computers. We'd know how many are in dead zones, and we would have more to report than, oh, we've made contact.
Yes, sir. But, we do know how many are in dead zones. We have ordered the hotspots.
Yes.
They will be here by Wednesday. So that information we do have. I can only speak for myself, but I know that for myself, the student education is utmost priority. And I think I can speak for everybody else in the administration team. We make constant phone calls. We get emails from people that say, yes, we have devices. We follow up with them. We have contacted 16, 20 companies who claim to have devices. And then when we actually make contact with them, they don't have any devices. They're putting word out there that they have them when in fact they don't have them. When we try to pin them down to, okay, we need this many, how many can you provide us? By when can you provide them to us? They don't have a date for us because they don't have any. And right now, if we were to go with a different company, then we're at the bottom of the list, where right now we are at the top of the list. And I will let Dr. Carrillo explain to you because he did talk to the lady today from HP and he can give you some additional information with that. The hotspots, I can tell you, they will be here this week. So I do have the schools right now verifying the list that I had compiled based on the information that they had sent me, so that as soon as those come in, we are able to give those out to the families immediately. But I'll let Dr. Carrillo give you further information on the contact with HP.
Okay. And I appreciate I appreciate the effort on the hotspots. That is showing some effect, and that's really where we're moving towards. But we still have a long ways to go. Go ahead, Mr. Carrillo. Dr. Carrillo.
One of the things that I want to say is if parents don't reply on who has the devices or who has computers or who doesn't have, that's something that we can't, if they don't reply to us that they don't have it, there's nothing we can do about that. The other thing is that you said that Silver had them. I got some real good sources and says, no, they don't. Mr. Carrillo.
Mr. President, members of the board, just for clarification, I want to be clear, okay? Administration does have the students in the best interest. We have the best interest in all our students and parents and families. And when we went into close down, shutdown, we went ahead and asked permission to reallocate funds from one of our partners, business partners, which was Freeport McMoran. And they were able to reallocate $60,000 that we were able to purchase 60 plus computers or 200 plus computers, because based on the survey that went out to parents, 1/3 of our community told us that they did not have a device, okay? So we went ahead and purchased those computers, and then or Chromebooks, and then we have others that we had in stock. So we went ahead and disseminated those, and every parent or every family that said that they did not have a device, those were pushed out, okay? So we were very proactive, knowing that this might go for a long time. And what we did, we started seeking other funding sources. We figured, it's going to cost us over $400,000 to purchase all these devices for our students. And we know that as a small district, we don't have those type of funds just sitting there waiting, okay, for us to be able to purchase, make a huge purchase like that. So we went back and forth with PED on some of our circle and CLSD grants. PED went with the feds, okay? The federal government asked for more information to the state. The state asked us for more information. So we went back and forth. When we reported to the board, that we were seeking funds to be able to make that purchase, okay? So when we got the permission to reallocate those funds, and that was approved, we already had our purchase orders ready. That same day, when we got the approval, that same day, that purchase order was submitted, okay? So we have been working diligently in seeking funds and trying to put what's best for our kids. So I just wanted to make sure that it was clarified that we weren't deceiving the board. We were telling the board where we were at constantly. Okay, so today we had another call with HP. We're in constant contact with them, and HP representative told us that they're still on no product. Okay, but one of the things that HP has done to be able to get the product to us quicker, or we're waiting for 1,000 laptops. There's districts that are waiting for 2,000, 3,000, 20,000, and so on and so forth. One of the things that they did, they went ahead and now they're paying for those the product once it becomes available to be air delivered as opposed to shipping by boat. So that's the latest that we have, and we're going to be meeting with them again at the end of the week, at the beginning of the week, so that we can have an update. We're working diligently to be able to get the product. We've talked, like Mrs. Varela explained, over 17 different companies. Victor can attest to that. So we are looking in the best interest of our students. Right now, we're talking about what else. We have refurbished some old laptops that have gone out already to families. We're looking at what else do we have in stock so that we're able to refurbish and make them work and put them out. We're looking at other companies that may have some devices that they may want to donate. I put a call to Freeport to see if they have any devices that they're not using that they can give us so we can put them out. Any computer that we can get in our hands, we're going to put it out there, because that is another family, another student that can have that device. So with that, I yield for any questions.
Let me point out a contradiction. Mrs. Varela made the comment that if we were to get computers from any other sources, that we would go down to the bottom of the list with the main vendor who we have the contract with. So what does that tell me in terms of how you might perceive that consequence in getting a different vendor?
So all vendors are saying that they have product when in actuality they don't.
That's not the question. That's not the question. The question is that if you did find a vendor that had products, would you purchase from them? Because according to Mrs. Varela, that would put us at the bottom of the list with our main provider for the 1,000 contracts.
Jose, if I can interject here. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
This is Terry.
Yes.
Hey, Terry.
Okay,
go ahead.
so we have to be careful on the vendors. We received a letter from the state auditor. It's called an emergency alert, and they do send out those letters that say to be very careful about adding new vendors and vendors that are reaching out to provide products on an emergency basis. And they said because that those are high, there's a high potential for fraud in those issues. So that we need to make sure that we are going with state-approved vendors that are on vendor lists, and that we continue to push through as we can without going out to unknown vendors. So those are the things I just wanted to interject, and then still following the procurement process as it is designed by the state and required by the state. So those things, yes, we have other approved vendors on those lists, but yes, we would go to the bottom of the list of those approved vendors. If we start reaching out to too many other vendors that are not on our vendor list, they could be violating procurement at that point. So we need to be careful of all the aspects of purchasing the devices. So I just wanted to interject because we did get that state auditor letter in our inbox this weekend. So just to notify, inform you guys that those things are potentials for fraud and abuse on the part of the vendors.
Let me add something here, Tori. In regards to your question also, that we've contacted our vendor and told them other vendors are saying that they have product, and they say send us their name. We'll contact them. We'll try to work with them, and they don't have product. That's the thing. There's no product. But one of the last things that I want to say, and if you don't have any more questions, I just want to say that moving into the schedule, we're doing what we can by having schedule changes to be able to support. We're coming up with some solutions. We're coming up with and being positive and working together. And I want to thank the board members because you have been and showing some positiveness and support for us. I think that the only way we're going to move forward is by working together and being positive and knowing that we care about our kids. Thank you.
Mr. President, Frank Cordova here.
Go ahead, Frank.
As far as the question that was asked, I believe that we should plan on staying out till January. If we plan that way, I think that we're doing it for the safety of our kids, the safety of our administration, and the safety of anybody that has to go to the school. Anyway, if the cases ease up and stuff, we can revisit that decision and we can adjust to it if we have to by the end of October or whenever we have to. But if we go long term by the end of the first semester, I think that it'll help our kids, our parents, and our teachers, and they'll feel a little bit safer than having to go at the end of right after Labor Day to the schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would
Other comments?
absolutely agree. I'd absolutely agree with Frank that I agree that's the right way to go, and that the safety of that. But the part is the consequence of those people that are not adequately able to participate in education, and are if we have any complicity in that. And again, Terry brought up a point of a memo that just was recently received, and it is in the right way of not using vendors that are not on our approved list, but there are certainly plenty. And again, it reiterated that we're going to contact other people, but we'll go through the main vendor for the determination as to whether that purchase. What was presented to us was that the computers were guaranteed to be provided by July. And then later again, it was guaranteed again for mid-August, or at least stating more of a soft date, but mid-August was the target. What is that guarantee? What was that guarantee? And how is it that we can't work to provide alternative vendors that are on our approved list to at least get 20, 30, or whatever computers they have available Why can't we go out and purchase those right now? And the
Because
other
they don't
part
have
was-
them.
So if I get on the website and I go look at Best Buy, Walmart, they won't be able to sell me any computers.
Oh, they'll sell you computers. It's just there is a shortage of Chromebooks right now.
That's okay, but they'll sell us computers. And is that something we're considering as an option, or we're just going to say we want this exact? Because my children don't have Chromebooks; they have iPads, and that's what they use. And that is an adequate machine, a very adequate machine. As a matter of fact, they prefer to use that. So that's what I'm talking about. That makes that point. If we're looking for that one specific computer and we're tying our hands to the one specific vendor, we're not looking at approved vendors that we have to buy something to help somebody to make it through the day. And families that have 3 or 4 kids that are having to have very difficult times. So, and with regards to what Mr. Sepulveda said, it's not the parents' responsibility unilaterally. We have to make contact. We know how many kids did not participate throughout the rest of the year last year. And if they haven't participated and we haven't made a contact and we're just saying for them to let us know, we're given that responsibility to educate our children. And we have to make it as easy, and we have to make a persistent effort to get that data and formulate strategies. So I would really like a follow-up the next month as to what it is we're doing to pick up, one, to identify how many people we actually need that need computers. And I'm really very happy to hear about the dead spots. That's very good. But I'd really like to hear how many are out there that don't have it and what we're doing to address that. The other part was that not addressed as to why didn't we use, because it took 6 weeks to get the grant funding approved for that change of purpose when we had the bond money that was right there. That's 6 weeks earlier that we could have put that out. And I haven't heard anything about that.
You got to remember that the bond money, we would have had to do the same thing because it was identified for certain projects, and the bond money was for that. So we would have had to do the same thing, going and getting reapproved to use bond money for that.
We have a new high-tech camera monitoring the football field that wasn't part of the original project. That seemed to go by.
But that wasn't paid by bond. That was not paid. That was not paid by bond money.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I'll look into that. And so one of the other things is that the budget committee meetings now are much more organized and much more effective. And I think had we had budget committee meetings throughout, we could discuss different options and the board could be better informed on whether or actually the board could participate in adding suggestions that might help. But the way we have things set up, the administration unilaterally takes the initiative and the direction to go to resolve things, and us at the board, we sit on our hands. When we are supposed to have a very active part on knowing what is in the budget, and being able to participate effectively on making those kind of decisions.
Well, anytime that we need to get back to our thing, but I just want to say one thing, is that the budget is there. We can go into it at any time we want to see it and see what they spent and where it's going. You just go online, all the budget is right there.
No,
Let's move on to where were we? Yes, it is.
The highlights are there.
Just go online
If you
and see
can
it.
discern anything on that, you've got to be a rocket scientist.
Well, that's where it's at. Anything else, Mr. Mendoza?
No, the administration's ready to make a recommendation, Mr. Sepulveda, the members of the board. With your permission,
Go ahead.
the administration recommends that we continue remote learning extension through the end of the first semester, and that we periodically, once a month, review the status of how we are at that point in terms of the COVID-19, to also include the status of the ordering, the purchasing, and the getting of the equipment and where we are, and then providing some assurances as to how many people have been, students, I'm sorry, are still without equipment. We can do that once a month, sir. We continue. So the recommendation is there on the table, and I'd like for the board to please consider that.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
I move, this is Gilbert. And I
Motion
appreciate the
by Mr.
additions.
Guadiana. Go ahead.
And I
What was
appreciate
that?
the
I didn't hear.
additions. I said, I appreciate the additions of the reporting on there. I think that's very important. Thank you very much, Mr. Mendoza.
You're welcome.
You heard the recommendation. You heard the motion. Do I have a second?
Gomez, second.
Motion by Mr. Gomez. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question, Mr. President. Mr. President, point of order. Can we actually vote on this today? Our agenda says a discussion on remote learning extension. It does not say anything about making a decision towards this effect. So are we legal in voting on this at this point or not?
During the last board meeting, it was communicated that it would be listed on the agenda as a discussion and possible action. And that clearly didn't
And
happen.
is it, Mr. Guadiana, on your agenda, do you see that it's listed that way?
I'm looking in the minutes to see at least if the minutes have that.
Well, it's
that would be-
on the agenda for action today, it's not listed that way.
I understand.
Yes,
But
thank you.
we've taken, the question stands. It's a legitimate question, no doubt. But is it an error that requires a delay? Because the current plan was that we would start the online, we would do away with the online and we'd be doing the hybrid beginning September 8th. So is that sufficient enough of a need that we can have that error, that omission, even though it's been communicated, it was communicated very clearly at the board meeting that that needs to happen. As far as the urgency of making that September 8th day not to be something that we're going to be held to, I would consider the possibility of accepting this now and acknowledging the error of the omission when it was clearly our intent that we would have this discussion and we would have a recommendation and possible vote.
Mr. Guadiana, you're one board member and you're expressing your consideration. Bring it before the board and see what the other board members say. We are a board.
How many board members are you, Frank?
Mr. President. Mr. President,
Go ahead, Frank.
Gomez.
Go ahead, Mr. Gomez.
I'll pull I agree with Frank. It's not, I understand we've been talking about it and talking about approval, but the way the agenda states, it is not an action item for today. And I make the move to recant my second on this.
Okay, let the minutes show that Mr. Gomez rescinds his second. Is there a second from somebody else? Is there a second from somebody else? Motion dies due to lack of second. Mr. Mendoza.
Mr. President, members of the board, I totally understand what Mr. Cordova has mentioned there. I would like to submit my resignation not my resignation, I'm sorry, my change in the recommendation that the discussion on the remote learning extension be the consideration that we go ahead and extend the remote learning through the end of the semester, period.
Again,
Why
Mr.
would you
Mendoza,
sorry.
excuse me a minute. That is not something that is on the agenda for an action item. One of the things that I would recommend is that given the time that we need to to put out a legal notice, let's have a special meeting and specifically for that.
I'm looking at the calendar, sir, and let's see. We could possibly do, it's got to have 72 hours. We could have another meeting on the 27th, which is this Thursday, with one agenda item, and then we'll write this. I can have our attorneys and so forth write it for us on this discussion, okay? Is the 27th okay with it? I don't know, the board has to decide whether you want to have a special meeting on the 27th.
I would say that we do. I don't know about how the other board members feel, but I would say that we do, and specifically for that one agenda item.
I agree. Frank, you're muted.
Mr. Cordova?
You're muted.
There it is, okay.
I agree, I said.
Mr. Gomez?
Did you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Gomez, I agree as well.
Okay, the 27th,
Do you want to do this in the morning?
what time would be good for everybody?
Mr. President, if it's possible to do it at 5 p.m.
I agree.
5 p.m.?
That'll be fine with me.
5 p.m. on the
Okay.
27th. Okay. Okay. Moving on to administration.
This is item A, is the approval of the athletic handbook. And Mr. Diaz, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, it's your call right now. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to bring your attention to the Cobre Coaches Sponsor Handbook. I took your suggestions and went back and made the corrections to the handbook. The first item that we would like to look at is on page 4. And the addition was coaches will help enforce and adhere to the posted field and gym policies. That was something that was asked of me to include, and also the include the official logo and any other use of logos on uniforms and/or spirit gear, fan cloth, fan gear, etc. must have prior approval from the Cobre High School administration. Any questions on that? And included was the picture of the logo that we are going to say is official. The last item on the coach's handbook that was in addition to what was already changed is on page 17.
Mr. Diaz, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Sepulveda, Don't we need an action item on A before he goes to the coaches? Are you on the second
Yes.
handbook? Yeah, so the administration recommends that you approve as presented by Mr. Diaz on item A, the athletic handbook.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move. Ms. Gilbert,
Motion by Mr. Guadiana, second. You hear a second on the handbook?
Gomez, second.
Second by Mr. Gomez. Any other questions or comments? Questions or comments?
I've got a question.
Go ahead, Frank.
Mr. President. Are we, looking through this handbook, there is highlighted material that was changed on page 4. There is on page 9. And there is on page 17. Are we going to approve each line item, or I think the agenda says the approval of the athletic handbook as a whole?
That's my understanding, is that we're gonna approve the handbook as a whole.
Okay, so right now we're approving the whole handbook.
negative,
Yes,
that's not the motion.
I don't think-
The motion was to approve that one particular change that was presented. And you're right, I agree with you, Frank, in terms of saying that's kind of a laborsome project to do.
Well, yeah.
But right now, the motion is for the one item.
Okay.
Well, okay, the way our agenda is that we approve the athletic handbook, the book as a whole. Maybe we
The
need to
whole
go
thing.
back a little bit here and have Mr. Diaz explain the other highlighted areas.
Yeah, so I'll rescind my motion then.
Okay,
Yes.
let the minutes show that Mr. Guadiana rescinds his motion, and that automatically
you.
rescinds a second. Mr. Diaz?
You're welcome.
Okay, so the items on page 9, where if we go back to page 9, those were not changed from the previous meeting. Those were not items that the board had wanted me to make adjustments to, so I left them in there as is. So nothing has been adjusted to that page. Now on page, unless we have any questions, I can move on to page 17.
I have a question on page 6.
Yes.
And this wasn't a highlighted section. It's under academic ineligibility, and it's the second paragraph. And it's it's the middle sentence, the second sentence. It says, talking about the students, they are considered ineligible until the grading period ends and the new 9 weeks begins, or is posted anyway. But the sentence preceding to that is, the student who is academically ineligible may practice with the athletic/activity program 2 weeks prior to the 9-week grading period ending / report cards being issued. But yet the next sentence says they're considered ineligible during that period. It says they're considered ineligible until the grading period ends.
Mr. Guadiana, I'm not sure which handbook we're looking at, because there are 2 handbooks. The one I was referring to right now.
I'm not looking at the coach sponsor one. I'm looking at the one of the, this one.
Okay, see, I was going over this one right now,
Okay, you
the
said it
coach's
was,
handbook.
okay, you said it was the student athletic handbook. This
It's
is,
the Cobre Coaches Sponsor Handbook.
okay, I'm sorry, I apologize.
So just clarification, we're all on the same handbook, correct?
Yes. Now,
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so on page 9, like I said, those adjustments, no adjustments were made from the previous meeting. The last adjustment was on page 17. And I was asked to include consequences for coaches on failure to adhere to the handbook. And it just simply states failure to adhere to the,
I have a question.
yes.
Are we voting on item 4A or are we voting on item 4B?
Yeah, this one, Irene, is the one on 4B. What I was gonna say is that we cover this one first, and then we'll go back and cover the other one, then we'll vote on each one separately.
Okay, that kind of led to.
We don't have a motion on the
I
floor.
apologize for the mix up there. So we are
No, but
going
go ahead and
over-
finish. Yeah,
Okay,
go ahead
so
and finish this one, and then we'll go with the other one.
Says failure to adhere the aforementioned guidelines can and will result in disciplinary action, including but not limited to verbal warning, written warning, suspension, and/or termination. Coaches are at-will employees of the Cobre Consolidated School and can be terminated at any time. Those were the two additions that I was asked to include in the coach's handbook from our prior meetings.
Who would make that determination?
Which determination, sir?
That one, that there's been a violation of the guidelines, and two, the disciplinary action that'll be corresponding to that.
Well, it would obviously have to go through due process. We'd obviously give the coaches due process. There would be an investigation done by me and the administration of Cobre High School, and then would be taken to Mr. Mendoza, and we would have that discussion with him, and ultimately it would be a group decision.
Is there a time frame that's associated with once the violation has occurred or been discovered?
No, I don't have a timeline in there for that.
So just for the consistency's sake, in a lot of the other policies you mentioned, and pending the results of an investigation, for consistency's sake, it would be good if that kind of read in that way. But even better, it would be if you assign the responsibility of that investigation to a consistent point like yourself.
Okay. And I don't have a problem adding that. Might I suggest that you guys might take this and approve it, and then just include that
Sure.
later.
I don't have a problem with that. The other question I had though was, we've changed the fundraising process, and I didn't see any reference to that here.
As far as what do you mean by the process has changed? In what way?
We're supposed to have like a designated major fundraiser, and that'll be the distribution that, people won't be able to do them throughout the year. The plethora of requests that we get, and the lack of accounting for them. We came up with I think Mr. Mendoza.
Yeah, we're supposed to have two fundraisers, one in the spring, one in the fall.
Yeah.
Okay, when COVID all started, I gathered with the coaches and we talked about the impact that this might have on fundraising and the things that we do as a district and as an athletic program. So I suggested to the coaches that we limit our fundraisers to limit the impact on our community. I did mention to Mr. Mendoza that that's what we would be doing, especially during our pandemic crisis, to help reduce the impact. Like I said, I don't know that was ever a policy that we were moving forward with from here on out. but it was definitely something that we wanted to do during these times.
And my understanding is that one of those fundraisers is going on right now with the chili roasting, with a couple of days of that, and then we'll have one in the spring. And that money is supposed to be divided out among all of the sports.
That is correct. So we will have.
That was my understanding on it.
That is correct. That is correct. So we are going to limit the amount of fundraisers to the beginning of the year now, and we will have a fan cloth geared for all sports, and then we're also going to include the chili sale. Those will be our two major fundraisers for the beginning of the year.
Two fundraisers for the beginning of the years, and we were talking about two for the entire academic year?
We're going to do fundraisers 2 times per year.
2 times per academic year?
Yes, that's what we're trying to do. Now there are, and it depends on if we are able to raise the funds that we need. I don't know if this is something that you guys are aware of, but as an athletic community, we are supported highly from the community, and it's a lot of money that comes in through the district, and we're trying to curb that, at least for this year. But we also know that there are needs, and there are things that our athletic programs are going to need. So, we're trying to take all of those things into consideration, being that we do have, 12 teams, and we are limiting the amount of fundraisers, but they will need certain things throughout the years, or throughout the year.
But
if we end up not having any sport actions, what's going to happen?
We will roll over that money to the next year and make sure that it goes to our activities. I mean, I wish I can foresee what would be happening if we weren't, but we do have to plan like we are having athletics, and with that comes certain costs.
With that also, there's the case of soft money not being very well accounted for, and that's kind of shown up in some audits, as well as the continuing complaints, and our audit committee hasn't really taken any strategy to either look in that or to prevent it. And so I'm very worried that if we accumulate a substantial amount of money, the accounting for that is not what it needs to be. And I think it's a very terrible disservice to have a fundraiser and the money not get to the purpose that it's supposed to. And that's happened enough, and it seems quite okay. That the reason that we talked about having the 2 fundraisers a year was because the enormous number of requests that we got, and they were written with very little clarification as to what it was for, and then they would come up repeatedly. So I think that if we made the decision, or we had the commitment that there would be a policy of limiting the sales to 2, that policy should be done. It should be completed, and then that these handbooks should make reference to that policy.
Like I said, the intent wasn't to create policy when that decision came. That the intent was to help the community, because they've been very supportive in the past.
Yes,
and the community is very, very supportive. So we're always trying to give back in a certain way, and the people that could help would be able to, but we wanted to limit the impact for this year. There's so many things this year that are very different with athletics, because there's constant changes with the NMAA, and it would be, I would say, difficult to create a policy for everything that comes our way, based on what's happening with COVID. But I mean, if this is something that we want to do and move forward with, I would definitely need some time to create something like that.
Well, I think the lead on that should be Mr. Mendoza, because this is a district policy. Certainly your input is very crucial to this, but Mr. Mendoza has been very much involved in the discussions that we've had on the fundraising efforts and the difficulty of managing all those efforts in any effective way. So it should be a district policy, and it should rise to the level of his signature as well as our approval.
Mr. President, can I intervene in this one?
Go ahead.
Right now, I gather that we're talking about fundraisers for the athletics. Remember that the fundraising that goes on includes band, classes, student council, elementary, field trips, and all of this. And I think that before we go to try to make a policy or to say we're going to have just one fundraiser this year and one next spring, I think that we need to get together as a board and with Mr. Mendoza and Mr. Diaz and the principals and discuss what kind of money and what kind of needs do we have before we start doing anything in policy. So for now, I would say we can just kind of freeze it for now and get together and talk about it. That would be my suggestion, but see what the rest of the board wants to do.
Any other
Thank you.
comments?
I think I'm sorry, Frank, go ahead.
No, I agree. I think with everything going on and with COVID, and I agree with Mr. Diaz as well, with NMAA changing everything. It's a day-by-day basis of what we're doing, and I think it's better to monitor and continue monitoring until we actually come with the consensus and come up with something that we can do better for the whole district.
Yes, and I think we all agree that at one time we had said that this year we were going to have just two fundraisers, one in the spring and one in the fall, which the one in the fall is going on right now, and then the one come spring, and then see where we are with this virus thing and go from there before we make a policy. Got to remember too that we are within the policy-making organization of the New Mexico New Mexico School Board Association. We belong to them, and they're the ones who come up with kind of a draft policy. Sometimes we take the policy as they write it, but sometimes we need to make it fit our district. So at that point, we have not met with them because they cannot fly in here. They do not fly. Their company did not allow them to fly. And we have met. Mr. Mendoza recently received a letter from them stating that as soon as they can, they're going to be down here, and we need to look at spending maybe 2 or 3 days with them in redoing our whole policy handbook. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Right now, we can make recommendations and make Mr. Mendoza can make administrative decisions, but the actual writing of a policy, we need to wait and see where we are, say 6 months down the line. I don't know how long this thing can last.
Along those lines, I would like to recommend that we contact the New Mexico School Board Association and see if they can send us a template of the fundraising policy, and that would be the ground point for us starting to have our discussions on what we have, rather than starting from ground zero. Get a template that's out there, and then we can start trying to tweak it. And this doesn't necessarily have to be people flying down and presenting it to us. If we're already contracted with them, I would think we would be able to request, hey, send us your current boilerplate for fundraising and use that as a starting point.
Mr. Board members, can you hear me? I've got a comment here on what Mr. Guardiana just said. Is that okay to speak, Mr. President?
Go ahead.
To answer that question on all board members, I have been in contact with the gentleman through the New Mexico School Board, and that's actually coming down to us via thumb drive, because he says he's not going to duplicate thousands of sheets, okay? So I'm actively, as we speak, waiting for those to arrive, but I'm not sure specifically what it's going to say on the fundraising for that, but it's the boards and the administration to recommend, and you guys have to approve the policy. And we're not going to be rushed to get it, but I do want to take our time to go through every single thing, especially on like our special ed department and our finance department. We need to make sure everything's there. But those are coming. And as soon as I get them, you'll be distributed, and you people will be able to just load it up on your computer and just go section by section and get it going. But what I further want to recommend is this thing about the 2 fundraisers this year. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I still feel sorry for all our parents and community members with Freeport and Acmaran having shut down. And I think we do have to be careful with that. What I can do is administratively put a directive that we have a fall and a spring, but yet we need to bring in all the principals and really sit down and talk to them, because that's another place where they're going to start hitting and wanting their money once the kids come back. Okay, you're going to see they want to, and rightfully so, they have the good of the school that they add extra things to the schools as needed. But I can spearhead all that administratively. So in terms of that, I don't know. Nelson, what is the status of the handbooks? There's no athletics going on at this point. We're going to open up practice, I assume, in a couple of weeks, right? Is that
Yes, there is a possibility to open up practices within the next few weeks.
Yeah, but then that's administrative to be decided. But the handbooks, do we need them approved tonight again? Here I go again, telling you. So,
we don't necessarily need them approved tonight. We won't have an actual game until October. So if we want to hold off on this, and I take whatever recommendations you guys would like me to include in here, and we can revisit this at a later time to get it approved. Because it does sound like there's some adjustments. There's some things that you might need me to add to this. So it doesn't necessarily have to be done today, but we can definitely hold off on approving these books till a later date.
all right, that's a decision.
Could you cover the athletic and activity policy handbook before we vote on the other one?
Yes, you would like me to go to item A?
Yes.
Okay. So to address Mr. Guadiana's question on page 6, the bottom there said a student who's academically ineligible may practice with the activity program 2 weeks prior to the 9 weeks grading period ending report cards being issued. They are considered ineligible until grading period ends and the new 9-week grade reports are posted. However, academically ineligible students cannot participate in interscholastic event at any level during the period of eligibility, travel to any interscholastic competition or event with the team during the period of eligibility. So you were suggesting that it might contradict itself. Based on what we have seen throughout the time, I've been an athletic director there at the high school, and with guidance from Mrs. Montoya, we have decided that if a student can show that they have progress and are on their way to being eligible, within those 2 weeks prior to the report cards coming out, they may begin to practice with their squads or with their teams.
So, but the way it's written, that they're considered ineligible like right away before the grade period ends. And so you're trying to clarify that they're considered eligible?
No, eligibility would mean that they are eligible to participate in games and in contests.
Okay. Okay, the way I read it, it seemed like that was a contradiction of saying they would be ineligible after that grading period ends, and then it says they are considered ineligible until the grading period ends.
So on that one, Mr. Guadiana, good evening, board.
Good evening.
How we wrote it was, so at the end of the first 9 weeks, the student can become ineligible. If they continue to show progress 2 weeks prior to the new ending of the new grading period, which would be in January or December, they can start to practice. They still won't be allowed to travel, but they can start practicing.
Okay. That part's not noted here. I appreciate the clarification, but this is pretty universal. It would apply for even those that are not showing progress, unless you make that clarification.
Okay, we can put that in there.
Okay.
Mr. Diaz, can I intervene on that, Frank Cordova? There was a tape, or there was Sally spoke last week on this about eligibility for all the kids from now till February of this, while this COVID thing is going on, and it is a little bit different than what we're discussing now. I would suggest that we review what Sally had to say, and I think what she said is, remember, at this time, those kids, when they start playing, they have to have a 2.0 and no Fs at all to be able to play. She did not go into saying anything about 6 weeks or 9 weeks or whatever. She did say some schools are on 6, some schools are on 9. The other thing that I might say is September the 2nd, we have another committee meeting with the New Mexico Activities Association, and I will keep you posted on what comes out of that meeting, because I'm sure we'll be addressing that at that time. Thank you.
And just to add to that, what Sally was the reason she came out and started talking about eligibility was because if we had started with fall sports this year, then everybody that was playing fall sports, such as volleyball or football or cross country, would have had a clean slate. And that's kind of why she's making reference to this now. Now that we're further along and we are probably, and then athletics will start more than likely after the 9 weeks or after 6 weeks in other places, that the eligibility rules apply again.
She also said that most of the schools will end in May, and the way that they're set up for the sports now, they'll go through the end of June, and to make sure that the kids are or that our athletes are legally and grade-wise able to compete at that time, even though they have graduated or the school has ended. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
But in those cases, if there's a penalty, it continues even on to the next school year, correct?
As far as if a student is ineligible at the end of the year, yes, it would continue on to the fall sports on the oncoming years. So I think what Mr. Cordova is referring to is that we need to make sure that the kids that graduate or at the end of the school year are eligible, so that we can ensure that they play.
Okay. Going on with the other handbook.
Yes, so if we look on page,
There's a highlight on page 2.
yes, those
There's a
are, I
highlight
didn't
on
know if
page
you
2.
wanted me, if you would like me to continue with the highlights from the previous meeting or just go to the adjustments.
Let's go to the adjustment.
Okay, so the next adjustment we will have is on page 13. It's there at the bottom. It's number 6, performance enhancing drugs. Any substance used to improve activity performance in humans. Performance enhancing drugs include, but are not limited to, anabolic steroids, designer steroids, and other WDA banned substances. And that was an addition that Mr. Holguin wanted to add to the handbook. Any questions on that one?
This was on page 14,
Page 13.
13? Okay.
The adjustments will be highlighted in orange.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, if we turn to page 14.
Can I stop something that goes to a page before page 14? And that is on page 11. I think this is a change that we had asked for. Under the paragraph that starts with sanction, it says the coach and/or school administration will handle discipline. Discipline can range from a verbal warning to a dismissal from the team. We had talked about developing a process that was uniform, that would not allow so much discretion. And now it looks like we're going back to the thing that got us in trouble in the first place. This coach is real strict. This one is not. This one plays favorite. This one doesn't. And I see that as being very problematic.
So if you look, this was an addition. This is the social media policy that starts on page 10. So it was added, and this one is referring to students, because this is not the coach's handbook. This is the athletic activity handbook.
Oh, I understand. I'm taking it as coaches will have their discretion on who it is that they're going to punish and who it is that they're going to punish to severely versus not severely, and the inconsistencies that will happen from coach to coach, from sports to sports, is what policy is supposed to try to avoid. This opens a can of worms of allowing a great deal of a range of discretion that we're going to have to deal with when one parent says, how come this guy did the same thing over here in this sport and my child is the only one being punished?
So you're suggesting that we be very specific on the process of who is going to do the investigation and which punishments will go to whatever indiscretion.
It doesn't, I don't know if you have to be specific to what punishment for each situation, but it would be really good to have one person one person deem the punishment, but also oversee the investigation. Certainly they might want to see somebody else investigate something, but I think the athletic director was probably very appropriate for that. And that would allow consistency throughout the different sports. And it would reflect that we have a policy that is uniformly applied to all students.
Okay, I will add that to there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, page 14, if we would. So this was a point of discussion that we had, and it simply states students found in violation of the aforementioned policies cannot dress out, sit with any team's bench or sideline, and cannot participate in practices during the discipline period.
Would this contradict a little bit on what we said a while ago, that they can go practice 2 weeks ahead?
This is discipline, and the other one is eligibility, academics.
So you could tell somebody that's within the 2-week period that they can practice?
Yes, if they show progress, if they are up to date with their grades and they've shown progress and they've shown that they are making an effort, then yes. So
And
what
who would
what
make
we're
that
looking at here is the discipline in violation of discipline in athletics. The first part of it was academics in athletics.
Okay. I understand the difference.
Any other questions on this item?
Just, it's an observation that it seems like we're more strict on how students perform in the practices and the games and within the team activity as opposed to the academics. It seems like on the academics, we're a lot more lenient, we're a lot more lenient. Here where it says you mess up in practice, you don't, I mean, you mess up with the team, you don't get to practice. And then prior to this, we're saying, hey, you mess up academically, well, we'll if you're doing okay for the first 2 weeks, then, you know, we'll let that go. That sends a sad message to me anyway. Can you explain why it is that we would have such a strict thing for discipline on the field as opposed to performance in the schools?
Well, with the conversations that we had, this orange highlighted area wasn't included. That wasn't there. I was asked to include that in this.
I agree.
Right?
I was one of the people that requested that.
Okay, so originally it wouldn't have contradicted, but now I could see why you think that it might. But you know, that's an adjustment to an adjustment. So you know, we would have
no.
go back and look at that.
I like the way this is stated here. I'm not asking to adjust this one. I'm just
Right.
asking, I'm pointing out the other one seems to be a lot more lax. I like this one, and I was part of that recommendation that we put that there.
I mean, if the board wants me to remove that, then we can remove it. I just, we felt as an administration that if a student is putting the work into adjusting and fixing their grades, and we wanted to be able to give that student an opportunity to participate.
As opposed to them spitting at somebody and or hitting somebody hard or whatever the case is. No, it's just an observation. I like the language the way it's there, and I hope to see it stay there.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns?
Now, moving on.
Page 28. This was also an adjustment that Mr. Guadiana had asked for us to do. And this was on the resources, on the 14 points of being a parent or an athlete. All we've done is we removed it from the actual handbook and included it as an additional resource for parents to access if need be.
So are you only providing the link or are you actually providing the document?
We just provided the link.
Okay, I have no opposition to including the document as an attachment.
And that's okay. This handbook seems pretty lengthy to begin with. So I think it's appropriate to just leave it as a link if there's no other objections.
That's your call.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have. So I turn it over back to Mr. Mendoza.
Mr. Mendoza? You're muted, Mr. Mendoza.
I'd like to move on to see if we can have board action take place on the athletic handbook as presented, and for the changes to be made by our athletic director, and approval that you accept as presented, the item A, the athletic handbook.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Gomez, so moved.
Motion by
I would
Mr. Gomez, second.
I would second
Second.
it based on the. I would second it based on the on incorporating the changes, specifically that one having to do with the academic suspension, to include that we would be based on demonstrated improvement for eligibility for playing within those 2 weeks or the remainder of that grading period.
You heard the recommendation. There's a motion and a second by Mr. Williana. Any other questions or
Mr.
comments?
President, the only thing that I've got to say is these changes and in going through these handbooks, I encourage it to be board action by the whole board, not just one member.
I think
Okay.
we've had a discussion in front of everybody, and Mrs. Montoya and Mr. Diaz recognize that the way it's written, there is no real criteria for giving an exception for people allowing to participate during that ineligible period. And it's omitted. It's an omission that they didn't put down the criteria would be demonstrating successful progress. So other than personal vendettas, I think what we need to do is concentrate on the effectiveness of our policy. In our policy, the way it's written right now, everybody would be eligible for that period, regardless of their academic improvement or not.
Mr. Williana, you're referring to we. Does that mean you and who else? The rest of the board?
Yes, we, as the rest of
Thank
the
you.
board,
Thank you. Let's
we,
do
as
it
the
then.
rest of the board, writing it that way and assigning it to it as a board, we're saying that that policy is universal and there's no criteria for determining who that exception will be made for. That's the reason I brought it up. And we will be signing this. And when we sign it, we collectively say exactly what I just finished pointing out.
Other comments? Other comments? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Can you clarify the motion, please, Frank? Toy.
The motion was to accept the athletic, let me see. Yeah, the athletic handbook with the changes.
Okay. I'll move.
No, we already made the motion and a second.
Okay, then that's fine. No other comment.
Any other questions? Call for the vote. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. Williana,
Yes.
Mr. Cordova,
Yes.
myself, yes. Motion passes. Entertain a motion for approval of the coaches handbook. Item B.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, Second,
Gomez, second.
second by Mr. Gomez. Any questions or comments?
I still hold opposition to, there's no expediency for the need of this, and I think it can be refined better. That's what we've already discussed.
Okay. Any other comments? We have a motion and a second. Call for the vote. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana,
No.
Mr. Cordova,
Yes.
myself, yes. Motion passes. Moves us to item 5, finance.
Yes, we have a request for a decrease, a bar to decrease transportation, account number 13,000. And at this point, Terry, can you please come on?
I'm here.
Okay,
So, Mr. President, members of the board, we have a bar decrease request put forth by the Public Education Department. The attachment to the board indicates on the table the Cobre amount that was reduced. So the operations part of the bar was decreased from 581,007 to 550,605. The lease portion of it did not change, so the total bar decrease for transportation is $30,402. I talked to Tina Montoya, and we took that out of their basic operations piece of their contract. There any questions?
Did she have any
I
problem with it?
did have a question. Is this actually a reduction in funding that we're going to be getting, or is this the funding that we'll be able to put in someplace else, the $30,000 reduction?
No, this is a reduction in funding from the transportation department at the PED.
Okay, sorry I missed that. Something came up that I needed to address, but thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. Mr. Sepulveda, you had a question?
Yeah, did Tina have a problem?
Yeah, kinda. She was kind of like, well, what do we do with that? But we did talk about their contract and looking at the fact too that currently they're not running, and we haven't reduced that part of it. They are running to deliver lunches, and we're looking at, they are getting training and stuff like that. So we do need to look at their contracts, both of them. Montoya is running for lunches. Porter is not currently running. So we do need to look at those contracts and see where exactly we make that $30,000 reduction. Now, we are getting information and a budget for K-5 and extended learning. So we don't know how currently in distance learning, if we're going to need transportation at all for that purpose, and see if they've allotted any money for transportation at that point for extended learning time and K-5, that we may be able to make up some of that difference. But that's not something that we've finalized at that point. That's why I didn't go ahead and bring the contracts back for approval, only the bar for the reduction put forth by the state.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Mendoza.
yeah, the administration recommends that you approve the bar with a decrease as presented by Terry.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So move. Frank Cordova.
Motion by Mr. Cordova. Second?
Second.
Who second?
I did, Gilbert.
second by Mr. Guadiana. Any other comments or questions?
I have a comment.
Oh.
We brought up, when the contract was initially approved, I brought up putting in a contingency for changes related to the amount of need as it's determined that students won't be coming back on class. And I'm wondering, have we painted ourselves in a corner having approved that contract and the contractor signed that? If the contractor refuses to sign any changes to that, are we beholden to the original contract?
We're looking into that with legal because that contract template is put forth by the Public Education Department themselves. So we do need to look at before we cut their contract. We've been cut in funding, so the bar is for the cut in funding. If we have to look to other funds, that's something that we may not have a choice in. But at this point, like I said, we're in discussions with Tina Montoya, and we do need to take that contract to legal for anything that before we do any reductions or bring it back to the board for any adjustments, we do need to go that route.
So is this a good time to make a decision on this adjustment?
The adjustment has to go through because the funding is not going to be provided by the Public Education Department. So whether or not the bar gets approved or not, the decrease has been done by PED no matter what.
So we may have to supplement the contract with operational funds to make up for that decrease then.
Or other funding. Like I said, extended learning time and K-5 is being reviewed right now as to what it's generating as far as money for K-5 and ELT. And depending on whether or not they've put that part into transportation that they did before, then, that money may or may not be available. But it all depends, too, if we're going to run buses for K-5 and ELT. If we're not, then we can't use that money for that. So,
Terry, if I may, Mr. Guadiana, Terry, if I may, this is going to be a hot topic come for the legislature in January.
yes.
All the districts have signed contracts, and now there is a bind right there. And as superintendents, we're really concerned that needs to be addressed, but it's got to come out through the PED and legal counsel, like we're saying, because there's going to have to be an adjustment. Now, look at us. Hopefully next week we'll be voting. I'm sorry, at the next board meeting, we'll be voting on going ahead and extending remote learning to January. And that's going to have an impact on our busing. In other words, there's going to be a lot of money there that, I hate to say it this way, but it's not earned, that we really need legal counsel to come this way. So that's before the council coming up.
Any other questions? Call for the vote. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana,
Yes.
Mr. Cordova,
Yes.
myself, yes, motion passes. Moves us down to superintendent report.
Yes, sir. There's only a few items here, but as part of my report here, I need to go back. And I was putting the hours in collection. Board members, we talked about having that board meeting on Thursday at 5 o'clock. I do the calculations, and it's got to be 72 hours before we have the meeting. And then we're really cutting it short, and I don't want to be in violation. So if I may recommend, would you consider Monday of next week, the 31st at 5 o'clock, and it'll give Irene Rodriguez enough time to put it in the paper, and let's go ahead and abide by the 72 hours. And Monday at 5 o'clock, if it meets the approval of the board, would be the next meeting that we have that one agenda item. And then also what I want to say here is that the administration offices will be closed on September 7th. due to the observing of Labor Day. And then our next regular board meeting is scheduled for the 14th of September. That one we can post for that. So, board members, your feeling on August the 27th, that's Monday, this coming Monday at 5 p.m. to address the discussion on remote learning extension.
I'm okay with it. This is Gilbert.
Okay with me, I don't know about the rest.
Mr. President, it's Gomez, so I'm good with it as well.
Mr.
Well,
President, Frank Cordova.
Yes, I'm fine with it.
Frank,
I'm good with it.
Cordova,
I'm good with it.
okay,
Okay, then.
okay, sir.
Irene, you're listening, so that you notice we can go to the paper on a normal basis and have a quick meeting the 31st at 5 p.m. Okay, that leads us to the student rep reports. Tanya, are you on there? After all this, are you awake?
I am. Good evening, board. So I have talked to a handful of the seniors, and there's a lot of technical difficulties that a lot of them are having. Some include audio delays, camera issues, microphone issues. A lot of them do believe that Google Meets is not the best platform to be using because of all these technical difficulties. The teacher is having trouble because you can't see all the students. Internet issues, as you guys discussed earlier. A lot of the students do believe that missing out on personal instruction, and it is what they are learning. Face-to-face interaction did have a huge part on the way we learn. Some believe that the education that they are needing is not being provided over online learning. But on the plus side, a lot of them do believe that learning online and having the schedule that we do have is helping a lot because we do have the organization. It is somewhat self-paced because the assignments are due the next day and you still have so much time after all your classes are finished to get your work done. Having this early release schedule, a lot of the students are able to have jobs, and I know a lot of them are really looking forward to that. That is all I have from the student perspective.
Board members, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Tonya. Appreciate it.
Toya, sorry, I had muted myself, but I want to say that's the most substantive report that's relevant to us that I've heard so far, and I appreciate that, and I look forward to your continuing advocacy for the students. Welcome. You're a very prized addition to us. Along those lines, is there a media that is recommended by students that we use for the classrooms?
There was not one that was mentioned, but a lot of teachers have been mentioning that we're going to be moving to Canvas. Is that going to happen anytime soon?
Mr. President and board members, we will be moving to Canvas. Hopefully, the update I got this afternoon or this morning was that they are trying to work on it. So we're hoping to have it up and running by Monday. And then we'll be transitioning with the teachers to get the Canvas up and going with them.
How
Thank you, Sandra.
is that, and how is the decision to go to that particular media made? I know that, and the reason I ask is Zoom I use a lot, and that's like one of the simplest things. And is this going to be as simple as Zoom, or Is it going to be like Google?
Canvas is what the universities use, so a lot of our students that are doing the dual credit already know the Canvas system, so it will be easier to take. Canvas also has a lot of updates that incorporates everything they're doing, so it meshes with a lot of other platforms. I know there is a library in Canvas where the whole state of New Mexico can input stuff, so if they're doing a history lesson and he's kind of stuck in a history spot, he can go on that library in Canvas and pull documents from other districts to help reinforce what they're teaching. So it has a lot of backbone to it. So Canvas is what we're waiting for.
Sounds like a good improvement.
Sandra, you forgot to mention that the state is paying for this service.
Oh yeah, and the state adopted it. So we were gonna adopt it and then the state adopted it for us. So the state will be paying for the Canvas program.
Cool. And Ingenuity,
Okay, Sandra.
Want to come over here?
is there Ingenuity? We're not using that until September 8th?
Yeah, hold on.
We're
I gotta go
using-
say- Go ahead.
At the high school, Edgenuity is being used as the credit recovery program.
Already?
But then Dr. Carrillo,
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, Edgenuity is our online academy that will take effect once we go back into the hybrid model. Right now, again, we want our students to be with their teachers of record as much as possible. And once Edgenuity, or once we go into the hybrid model or full face-to-face, then Edgenuity will be available for all those students and parents that choose to continue to stay online.
Dr. Carrillo, can you add that to the discussion? It fits under the agenda that we're going to be facing in the next special meeting. Just to continue that as part of the discussion.
Yes, sir, I will.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? At this time, we'll take anything from the public. Anything out there, Victor?
No, sir, not at the moment.
Okay,
So
and then
At
moves
this
us
point,
to items for next. Go ahead.
with an input, I thought like the last meeting where we actually had visitors that could actually show up on the screen, that's not available anymore?
Victor said there was nobody.
I understand.
That's available. It was advertised as all the other meetings on social media and on our district website.
I
As
know.
of right now, we only have 15 people participating. No one else has requested to participate. And the YouTube
Okay, so like last time we had
channel,
Francis
there's
Gonzalez.
no comments. Yeah, they joined the
Okay, but
meeting.
like last time we had Francis Gonzalez. Okay, and that option is available and that's made known to them.
Yeah, it's on social media and it's on
Is
our
that- Okay,
and it's also pushed out
Okay.
on the school messenger.
okay.
Items for next agenda. The only thing will be the special meeting that we're having on the 31st.
Mr. President, I have one question on that special meeting. All we're gonna have is one item on that agenda, right?
Right. And that's to
Okay, we're gonna
vote
be
to continue to either 6 weeks or at the end of the year.
Okay, that's one item. Thank you.
9 weeks. Anything else? Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Done.
Motion by Mr. Cordova. We're adjourned. Thank
Hey,
you,
Victor,
everybody.
Victor, can
Thank
you
you,
stay on for
Toya.
a second? Thank you, Toya. Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Victor,
Thank you, Sandra.
can I talk to you about my email? Victor,
Yeah, go ahead.
I still can't access, like, you'll see me always as Elias Guadiana because I can't